Hello, bruvs. It's time to wrap this new series up, bruv. This worldwide sensation. I believe that was for the... I don't care, I'm not going back to this book. Let's get in it. It used to become a romantic adventure riding around Monterey on back streets, up side streets, into grubby, indifferent old shops. Una was always in search of beauty. It never failed to delight her when she found a rare moonstone or some other lovely reminiscent piece of jewelry. The antique stores in Monterey offered up strange argosies of poetic jewelry. Una was invariably captivated. Her imagination ran riot, finding stories to match her finds. If the owner of the shop was reluctant about talking, Una was diabolically sly in ferreting out the different pathetic little histories which she instinctively knew belonged to the things she bought. There was a sad, strange woman living in Carmel, one of many transitory souls who came there eternally seeking solace of some sort. She was a Hungarian and separated from her husband, a University of California professor. Una heard in some roundabout fashion that she wanted to sell some garnets. It was reported to be an exceptionally beautiful collection. So off we started in search of the lady. The twins went with us on this particular trip. I bought a bracelet for Una and a locket for myself. The locket has been lost these many years, but Una still treasures her bracelet. Outside the woman's gate, little Garth looked up and said, "Mother, why does that lady make me feel like crying?" She is so sad because she is far from her home across the sea, most of all because she cannot see her little son. Sometimes in the evenings I would sing for Una and Robin and play my own accompaniments on the old square piano Una had bought in Monterey. Its tone was faint and brittle, just right, she said, for playing scarlatti and little toccatas. Robin wrote a poem about that piano. Whose fingers wore your ivory keys so thin, as tempest and tide flow some pearly shell, the castaway of indefatigable seas on a low shingle far away. You will not tell, we cannot know. Later I studied various things, Greek mythology, voice, piano. Presently I opened a studio and taught dancing. I worked long hours, hoping to forget the hurt of disillusionment. It was during this period that Edward and I were divorced. A year or two later, I married Jim Greenan, and we moved to the Orient. I tried so desperately never to lose Una. When my babies were born, we exchanged many letters. Una once wrote, "I can't help but admire you for the way you have taken hold of your task. I can but sigh for you and your labors, for I too have worked hard. I didn't realize what I had done then, but I do now. I'd given up my dreams of a career and turned the dreams into an intimate reality. I found myself eager to create a home, eager for children. I, too, was willing to wash and cook and sew, since it was at that time a necessity. I was again hoping to be like Una, praying for a fulfillment such as she possessed. There were moments, hours of dread sorrow when I felt so inadequate without Una's laughing voice guiding me. One night a strange thing happened. It was a sultry, foreboding night in the Philippines, the air heavy with jasmine and cereus and other unknown night-blooming flowers. The tribal gongs of the Igorots had been pounding for days and nights. The very air vibrated with their sinister, incessant sound. Their tribal dance was going on someplace in the jungle. My head ached. Every beat of those gongs intensified the pain. Even my heart kept pace. Quite suddenly, Una appeared before me. She smiled as she sat there, suggested moods for my interpretation of Helios. I don't know what it's. Heloise, and Abelard. I reached for a white scarf and draped it around my head, nun fashion. I remember I walked away from Una into the garden, telling the beads and dreaming of Abelard. Una came with me. She appeared to be quite delighted. The sound of the gongs rose to an abrupt crescendo, and Una vanished. but I had a feverish, curious feeling as though the whole hallucination had come as a warning. I knew then it was imperative to find my beloved friend once again. When I did return after being away for 10 years, I went instantly to Carmel to see Una. From others, I was always hearing of her charm and wit, her poise and intelligence. I heard how she had helped Robin in his work. He was ever encompassed by her solicitude and tenderness and inspiration. Others knew her for these things and will always. Her place is secure by her influence on his work. But I was not seeking out the wife of a famous man. I wanted only to sit face to face and clasp the hand of my dearest friend. And there I found her in Torhouse, just as inspiring as ever. Nothing had changed except to grow more beautiful. Robin had finished hauling rocks up from the sea. Hawk Tower was complete, with white fat pigeons flying around it and nestling in its windows. They were using the big dining room now, which looked so like an old English inn kitchen. Big fireplace, pottery of cheerful colors, little Chelsea figures beside the brass candlesticks, heavy oaken benches and pale rose tiled floor. The rough tiles made and laid by Spanish workmen. Una still used the oil lamps and candles. The same Botticelli Madonnas smiled down from the redwood walls, as serene as Una herself. There were hundreds more books piled up on top of everything, everywhere, on benches, on windowsills, on new shelves reaching to the ceiling, books about things that interested her most. Travel, biography, psychology, Irish archaeology, poetry, of course. Do you know Rilke, his sonnets to Orpheus, and have you read these marvelous new poems of Frederick Mortimer Clapp, our Timmy? You must. Now listen. There were the same shadowy mirrors reflecting the sea and the flash of pigeons' wings in the courtyard. Oh, and in the pistol cupboard a skull, such a nice one with 2 teeth, and a carved wood image of the Cern giant displaying all of his virility. A haze of sandalwood incense still floated up from the antique bronze burner, and there was the Steinway Grand by the sea window, and reed organs, 3 of them, more than ever, all a sheenin', with long years a handlin'. And there was Robin, world famous now, sitting by the fire, smoking his pipe, just as silent as always. Only the twins had changed. They had grown up and been to college, handsome, husky lads who swaggered a bit and shouldered their mother about like young oxen. Sometimes they took her dancing. She loved that. It's a dreary thought, she says, that they are grown up and must go away and make careers of their own. But I don't have to look back and regret that I didn't realize how happy I was while they were always with us. I bless my happiness every day. And the trees Robin had planted in 1919, they were so tall they touched the stars. Haig thought he remembered me and grew so excited in his greeting he proceeded to lose his dinner then and there. Robin laughed. Haig has a demonstrative nature. He's so glad to see you, Edith. In the evening, with her long braids hanging down over that Madonna blue dressing gown I had chosen for her in Shanghai, Una sat and played old airs on her organ. Edith, this very one was found in Queen Elizabeth's virginal book. Actually, it was written for the lute, but here, or else, can you realize that Petrie collected more than 2,000 unprinted Gaelic airs? Just imagine what fun he had, and off she'd be on one of her favorite topics. But soon she would blow out the candle that lighted her music and open the drawer of that old mahogany dresser to reach for her gigantic white comb. I'm certain she found it, says Robin, in a cave in the Orkneys. Viking, you know, or worse. She felt romantic. She looked romantic, but then she would cease to comb those long locks. I'd seen her comb them 1,000 times. She would cease and say, "If you must know the secret of that marvelous gingerbread we have for tea, it's sour cream. Sour cream does it." Or, "Robin, you've got to stop feeding the pigeons and quail every time you go into the courtyard. They are so fat their wings can scarcely lift them. Besides, 100 weight of grain a month is all we can allot to that luxury. You know you promised." Una took me into the little bedroom downstairs off from the living room. It was very strange. Time had stood still. My years in the Orient, the birth of my children, joys and pains, all my varied experiences sank away deep in my mind. I had circled back and all was unchanged. All was as I had remembered. The fire blazed on the hearth. There was the big red the big bed by the sea window, and hanging from the beam above it a ship's bell, set under a teakwood bar copied from the one in Durer's Melancholia. This bell has served one way and another in Una's family for over 100 years. Now again I could reach up the moment I waked and pull the rope and hear the immediate answering clang from Una's bell upstairs. As I undressed, I read the words painted on the beam, Spencer's lines: sleep after toil, port after stormy seas, ease after war, death after life does greatly please. Here was my port, here I could rest secure, my nostalgia gone. It was all more beautiful than ever. Tomorrow I would rise up from sleep and decipher again these mottos which Una used for solace and excitement. Robin had laboriously printed them in Gothic lettering. Anywhere her eye would pick them up as she hastened to and fro about her work. The ready mind regardeth never toil, but still is pressed to accomplish heart's intent. That's a long, hard one from Alton Towers in Stratfordshire. I like best Time and I against any two, but this is Una's favorite. Fight on, my men, says Sir Andrew Barton. I am hurt, but I am not slain. I'll lay me down and bleed a while, and then I'll rise and fight again. Tomorrow, too, we would climb to the little oak-paneled room in the tower and tell our souls as we sat by the fragrant pitch pine fire. Perhaps Una would play on the little melodeon up there, Western Wind, or How Should I Your True Love Know? Then I will bring out some phonograph records and improvise dances to them, blues, Hawaiian dances, and hot, throbbing tangos. And she will say, not too many of those. They are too exciting if I am just making shirts. Wait until I have to do something energetic. Scrubbing, maybe. Many of these memories are of years long gone by. The pattern of life changes fast, but there will be other lovely designs. Now my family and I are living in Carmel and are building a house on the mesa above the mission. The many books that Una gave me, each with its evocative inscription, and Robin's books shall have a shelf of their own in my living room amid other treasures of mine. There will hang the portrait of my grandmother with its sweet, direct gaze. It was painted in China. An Oriental artist made this amazing likeness of her from a photograph my grandfather took out there with him. Now I have 3 children, Maeve of the lucky eyes and high heart, named after Una's firstborn. Maeve, so aware of natural beauty and sympathetic to my every mood. There is Jimmy with his carefree smile, happiest when some mischief is afoot. And my youngest, Owen, so much a part of me in my earlier dreams. To them, I am dedicating this little book. It will help them to envisage a very real part of my life. And how shall I end these memories? Perhaps best with this episode of 2 years ago, which began in imagined discord but ended on a true full note. Some foolish person repeated a random fragmentary bit of conversation, one of those destructive bits of gossip which are rampant in Carmel, as well as in mining camps from Nevada to the Orient. I was deeply hurt. I couldn't bring myself to believe that Una had betrayed me knowingly. But I was determined to get to the bottom of the thing and find out for myself. There is no telephone in Tor House, so I was unable to call first. I just burst in upon her most unceremoniously. I found Una in the kitchen in the throes of cooking an omelet. It was a decidedly inopportune moment. She was terribly cross with Garth, for he had just been arrested for reckless driving. He and Donnan were in the dining room with 2 or 3 of their friends. They were laughing and talking, and Una was fuming. Besides this, she confided, there's a man in there with Robin in the living room. They're drinking my bottle of wonderful scotch the Claps gave me for my birthday. It's Arthur Hobhouse, MP. What does that matter, I asked, unimpressed, anxious to talk over my great trouble. Matter? Una's voice rose to a shout as she started to beat up a bowl full of egg whites. He's actually related to John Cam Hobhouse, Byron's Hobhouse. He's been here all day. We've been talking for hours about Lord Byron and the abdication of the king and English politics. We took him out to Point Lobos and kept him there until almost dark. When we came home, I said, all we're going to have for supper is an omelet. You can stay if you like. Omelets are my great specialty. So he stayed. How did you learn to make omelets? I asked irrelevantly. From a French novel, Una giggled and poured us both out some sherry. I used to think I'd get a salon together by being famous for my omelets. That's all very interesting, said, but I've got to talk to you right now. Wait until I finish this omelet, Edith implored Una. Almost any moment can be fatal. Well, this moment is fatal to me, I said angrily. Oh dear, go in with Robin and Hobhouse until I get this thing finished. Go trade this awful sherry for that beautiful scotch. Una was so insistent I went in to follow instructions, but Mr. Hobhouse refused to trade. He said very firmly, no. I went back and reported this deplorable selfishness. By this time, due to my interference in Una's Una's amusing conversation, the omelet had shriveled up until it looked like a piece of old leather. Una was terribly dismayed. Oh dear, look at it. It's all I've got in the house to eat. But she didn't let this stop her. She placed it very daintily on a hot plate and carried it on a tray to the MP's chair. Then she came back to me and whispered triumphantly, he's eating it, either politely or unconsciously. Then I poured out my heartache to Una. It was an idiotically inappropriate moment for a heart-to-heart talk, but we had one nevertheless. Una explained what had been said, and I was happier. I tried to explain my hurt feelings and how much I loved her, and she hugged me and we both wept and laughed, and then Una grew very serious for a moment. Well, I guess it's as you say, Edith. No one has ever loved me as much as you do. There they are. On the rocks. Tor House, Carmel, California, St. Patrick's Day, 1939. Dearest Edith, I have just finished reading your manuscript and a flood of memories sweeps over me. I had been saving these treasures for a quieter time. You've made me stop and look at some of them now, my invisible landscapes, as Edward Lee Masters calls them. He describes a place lived in year after year. The seasons revolve, sunshine and darkness cover it in turn. Snow and rain fall upon the ever-changing human figures until at last, on that one field, landscape lies in layers like heaped-up leaves. We have that here at Tor House, that rich accretion. But if the wind blows through the leaves, if Edith thrusts in her hand and shifts them, or if, as happened yesterday, I chance upon an old snapshot. I lost my spot. How fresh and inviolate some scene long hidden emerges. Here's the picture I found. You see that the day is gray and the wind flaps my old paisley shawl as Robin and I say goodbye to a group of people at the gate. Across the courtyard, two little boys are running, legs flying, bodies bent forward, the arrested movement of a split second. My heart near burst as I looked at it. The million darling games Garth and Donnan are playing out there in our invisible landscapes. You thank us for much happiness in those early days, but you do not speak of the pleasure we felt in your eager delight and wish to participate in our daily life, and in your beauty, which was growing year by year. You stepped into your place by my side so naturally, for you were precisely the age of my twin sisters. It was I who had taught them to read and had been handing on to them ever after books, names, stars. Oh, I hope, my dear, I never arrived at the point of shaking you, did I? As I shook Violet, I had come to suspect that girls' easy acceptance of the shapes that I pointed out in the constellations, however intricate or improbable they seemed. Suddenly, one night I said, diagram that one, and what she drew had no form. It was just a tangled mess of stars. I couldn't bear it. I like your feeling about Tor House. Have you been reading Remembrance of Things Past? For you are using Tor House as Proust did his grandmother, the single constant value which makes the rest of the system possible, giving reality and significance to the general incoherent flux of events. I hope Tor House will always be that symbol of stability to you, no matter how scenes and moods change and whirl about you. Dear Edith, still after 26 years, always faithfully, Una. And here comes the poem, mentioned in the beginning of the book. The mountain village to Uj, my adored and I have wandered from the flock. We have taken up our love in our four hands and carried it beyond the shadow of time. Who are you entering with calm, tired faces this mountain village of eternity? She is my dearly loved, and I am hers. See, we have carried our most costly things across the valley from the farthest heights, and brought it, villagers, for you to bless. 2. Look down from the high village, my adored, even from the village gate. A little while forget the kindly people gathered here about us, and their calm and radiant eyes. Forget the little houses, though each one is beautiful, and every vine-bound door wide open to the olive-shaded street, and the windows full of lilies. But look down over the white lake of the billowing mist that bent above us for a cloudy sky. When we were crossing the valley, there the roar of tireless thunder and his leaping light, continuously aflutter with wild birds trapped in a vaulting, terrified our steps. But here, above that heaven is audible, no murmur of hymn nor a flash beheld. 3. Look down from the high village, my adored, even from the village gate, and say what forms move on the ridge beyond the ocean of mist. A marching like a multitude of men moves on the farther ridge against the cloud. Tell us, your gentle-voiced, calm villagers, what is the file and multitude of men that move on the ridge there against the cloud? But you have come from there, do you not know? Is it from there we have come? Indeed, we knew people must labor in the traveling world, but yet it is most strange. Yonder I see men who were dead before these wars began. And look, they are moved along the mountain ridge, upright and blithe, freed travelers. To the right of the tall peak they walk, but on its left are men who never have lived on earth. Yes, but regard more carefully the peak of which you have spoken. It is like a giant who holds a lantern over the moving heads. So when I lived beside the blue Swiss lake and near Geneva, we would often look up the long furrow of the swift Arve to see Napoleon's face carved on supreme Mont Blanc, they said it was, under the flame-white stress of the sun and glare of the ethereal world. And so this peak appears to have the form of an old giant. And as the glaciers melt in the afternoon on high mountains, so from him the spittle and rheum of his extreme old age from huge white points and fibers of his beard drizzle. And the lantern shakes in his old hand. This is the watchman, that old giant Time, who turns as the long file flows under him. His somber, thin, and painful lantern rays on all the generations of the world. His office is a watchman's and no more. He does not move, nor change, nor make, nor slay, but only watches, holding with slow hand his lantern over the reluctant heads. This is never going to end. 4. But those we have seen die are moving there. My father, whom I loved and have seen die, walks the great ridge over the cloudy gulf. My father on the giant's right, he walks, calm and slow pacing as you used to be. You saw the spirit struggle away from him. The spirit alone is mortal, with its pains and hopes and envious folly and vile fear. Momentary reflection of that light Time holds above the proud and passive world. Flicker of the old lantern on some form and leaves it when it goes beyond the glare into the quiet of eternity. The spirit is momentary. The being remains eternal and not spoiled. ? Sorry. You have understood. His lantern is the mother of the hours and of all the years and ages, but equally of the weak human spirit that shines and dies. Then hope and fear and joy and pain are all contemptible? At least we villagers believe so and are delivered from their teeth. 5. Look down from this high village, my adored, even from the village gate. In little plots the vineyards and the grain fields down the slope lie green and golden. Delicate rills divide them with silvery gush and whisper. Then begin the vast heads of the inner branching trees of that old forest we have wandered in, roofed in huge towers, but from some high beheld they seemed low lichen on an old gray stone. They are somber and dense and starless, and a fog floods all the rest onto the further ridge. We must return unto the farther ridge. The movement and necessity of things require us. We must march with multitudes and labor in the giant's lantern light. But having carried our most costly thing up to this mountain village, even our love, we walk with confidence and securely now. The kindly villagers will keep it for us. Here in the mountains of eternity, dear villagers, guard well your sacred trust. Carmel, 1916. 250 copies of Una Jeffers by Edith Greenan have been printed by the Ward Ritchie Press and completed in June 1939. The decorations were made by Fletcher Martin. Great reading, Bob. Is there no bookmark? Man, we got about 4 minutes. I can read you from a battered copy of Cawdor. Let's see what we can find in Cawdor. It's got to be a short poem or chew. There it is, the bird with the dark plumes. 149. The bird with the dark plumes. The bird with the dark plumes in my blood that never for one moment, however I patched my truces, consented to make peace with the people. It is pitiful now to watch her pleasure in a breath of tempest, breaking the sad promise of spring. Are these that morose hawk's wings vaulting a mere mad swallows, the snow-shed peak, the violent precipice? Poor outlaw that would not value their praise, do you prize their blame? Their liking, she said, was a long creance, but let them be kind enough to hate me. That opens the sky. It is almost as foolish, my poor falcon, to want hatred as to want love, and harder to win. To a young artist, it is good for strength not to be merciful to its own weakness, good for the deep urn to run over, good to explore the peaks and the deeps who can endure it, good to be hurt who can be healed afterward. But you that have whetted consciousness too bitter an edge, too keenly daring, so that the color of a leaf can make you tremble, and your own thoughts like harriers tear the live mind. Were your bones mountains, your blood rivers to endure it? And all the labor of discipline labors to death. Delight is exquisite, pain is more present. You have sold the armor, you have bought shining with burning. One should be stronger than strength to fight bear sark in the stabbing field and the rage of the stars. I tell you, unconsciousness is the treasure, the tower, the fortress. Referred to that, one may live anything. The temple and the tower, poor dancer on the flints, and shards in the temple porches. Turn home. One last poem. Torhouse. If you should look for this place after a handful of lifetimes, perhaps in my planted forest a few may stand yet. Dark-leaved Australians or the coast cypress, haggard with storm drift. But fire and the axe are devils. Look for foundations of seen war. I can't do it. Torhouse. If you should look for this place after a handful of lifetimes, perhaps. Torhouse. If you should look for this place after a handful of lifetimes, perhaps of my planted forest a few may stand yet. Dark-leaved Australians, or the coast cypress, haggard with storm drift. But fire and axe are devils. Look for foundations of sea-worn granite. My fingers had the art to make stone love stone. You will find some remnant. But if you should look in your idleness after 10,000 years, it is the granite knoll on the granite and lava tongue in the midst of the bay by the mouth of the Carmel River Valley. These four will remain in the change of names. You will know it by the wild sea fragrance of wind, though the ocean may have climbed or retired a little. You will know it by the valley inland that our sun and our moon were born from before the poles changed. And Orion in December evenings was strung in the throat of the valley like a lamp-lighted bridge. Come in the morning, you will see white gulls weaving a dance over blue water. The wane of the moon, their dance companion. A ghost walking by daylight, but wider and whiter than any bird in the world. My ghost you needn't look for. It is probably here, but a dark one. Deep in the granite, not dancing on wind with the mad wings and the day moon. Cheerio, Bobs. Goodbye.